Hello, Reddit. My name is Oliver, and I'm 34 years old. I work as an engineer and have been living with the woman I thought was the love of my life. Her name is Kate, and we have been together for 7 years. We had it all. A big house in the suburbs, a stable relationship, and a seemingly happy life. Not long ago, we found out that Kate was pregnant. This news turned my life upside down, in the best way possible. I was thrilled, and we started making plans for the future. Kate seemed a bit withdrawn, but I thought it was just hormonal changes or fear of her new role as a mother. I supported her, tried to be there for her as much as possible, and create all the conditions for a quiet life. I believed in our future, but it was a lie. The first months of my pregnancy went smoothly. We went to doctor's appointments together, discussed names for the baby, and bought furniture for the nursery. I was sure that this would be the beginning of a new chapter in our lives. But soon I began to notice subtle changes in Kate's behavior. She began to withdraw more often, open and lively before. She now seemed to be constantly thoughtful and distant. Her phone was always with her, whereas before it might have been on the kitchen table or nightstand. Now it was always with her, and the screen was always turned down. She began to avoid our usual conversations about the future. When I asked about her feelings or offered to buy something together for the child, she answered briefly, "We'll see," or "I'll think about it." At first, I decided not to worry. I thought it was due to emotional instability during pregnancy, but something kept nagging at me. Over time, Kate's distance only grew. One evening, when we were having dinner together, she received a message on her phone and hastily slipped it into her pocket. I joked, "Oh, is it someone important?" She answered too quickly, "Just a client. Nothing important." Her tone and facial expression alarmed me. But again, I decided to put it down to stress. Later that night, I woke up to find her sitting in the living room with her phone in her hand. Her face was tense, and she was typing quickly on the keyboard. When I entered the room, she abruptly turned off the screen and said, "I can't sleep. I'm just texting with my friend." But it was already too weird. We decided to organize a gender party to find out the sex of our unborn child with friends and family. We invited everyone close to us, including our neighbor Mark, who often came over for coffee. I always thought Mark was just a friendly neighbor and never paid attention to his frequent visits. The day of the party came. The house was decorated with balloons and ribbons, and the guests were in a good mood. And on that day, everything changed. When Mark entered our house, Kate literally rushed to him. She hugged him as tightly as if they hadn't seen each other for months. Her face literally shone with happiness. Mark responded with the same warmth. They stood there for a few seconds while everyone else just watched. My mom even made a joke. "Oliver, look, I think your neighbor has a fan." That was the moment when a cold suspicion pierced me. After that moment, I could no longer calm myself down. I noticed Kate and Mark exchanging brief glances and smiles throughout the party. I tried to ignore it. I told myself that I was imagining things and that I was being overly sensitive, but the tension only grew. During the party, Kate left her laptop in our bedroom. Everyone was busy, and I decided to seize the moment. I wasn't proud of myself for what I was about to do, but something inside me was compelling me to check her emails. I opened my laptop, and on the screen was a correspondence with Mark. The first words I saw pierced me through. "Mark, I love you. I can't wait any longer. But we have to wait until the baby is born for everything to go according to plan." The details of their plan followed. "I'm going to file for divorce right after the baby is born. Oliver will pay alimony. I want to sue for half of the property so that the child and I can start a new life." My heart stopped. This wasn't just flirting or a stupid fling. It was a planned destruction of everything we had built together. They were using me, and they wanted to use my love for my child as a tool. After I saw her correspondence with Mark, I was overcome with a bitter mixture of anger and disappointment. My first thought was to go to her, right there at the party and expose the truth in front of the guests. But something in me told me to stop. It would be too easy, and she would find a way to deny everything. I realized that I needed to take a cold, calculated approach if I wanted her to take full responsibility for her actions. I closed her laptop and left the room as if nothing had happened. But a plan was already being born inside me. The first step was to collect as much evidence as possible so that she had no chance of getting away with it. That evening, I was watching her behavior the whole time. She was laughing, joking with the guests, and when she crossed paths with Mark, her face was lit up with happiness. This picture was so discordant with what I was feeling that I had to barely restrain myself from making a scene on the spot. After the party was over and everyone had left, I went back to her laptop to take the first steps. I took a picture of their entire dialogue, saved it in several places, and emailed copies to myself. This was just the beginning. I wanted to understand how deep her lies went and how long it had been going on. The next day, I checked her call history through our family plan. What I saw confirmed my worst suspicions. The calls to Mark were constant. They were on the phone every morning as soon as I left for work, and almost every evening. At the moments when I thought she was responding to client emails or just checking the news, she was talking to him. Their calls lasted for hours, and all of this was done without me suspecting anything. A few years ago, I installed a surveillance camera in the living room at home. We rarely used it, mostly for security, but now it was my next step. I checked the latest footage, and what I saw made me angry. It turned out that Mark came to our house when I was at work. They were sitting together on our couch, hugging, laughing, and even kissing right in the living room. The recording showed them discussing their plans for the future. After the birth, "Everything will be easier," she said. "He won't be able to do anything. I will file for divorce, and we will take everything we need." Her words made me cringe. They were building their future at the expense of me, my property, my work. They had no doubt how it would end. I made copies of these videos and saved them in the cloud and on flash drives. Now I had indisputable proof that they had not only betrayed me, but had also planned how to use me to the last. I needed to consult a lawyer. I contacted a lawyer recommended by a friend and told him the whole situation. He confirmed my guesses. If I just wait, Kate will file for divorce first, and it will be difficult for me to protect my property. But if I filed first, providing evidence of her infidelity, I would have a chance to keep the house and minimize financial losses. In addition, we could try to ensure that I have maximum rights to my unborn child. The lawyer advised me not to act hastily. Let her think that everything is going according to her plan. The less she suspects, the more likely we are to be able to complete the case without her interference. I agreed. My goal now was to make her life fall on her with all its weight. Over the next few days, I continued to follow her. Her behavior had hardly changed. She was still smiling and relaxed, as if her life was perfectly balanced. She didn't even realize that I already knew the truth. But the more I looked at it, the more my resolve grew. She thought she was in control of the game. She thought she was in control. But this time, the control was in my hands. I decided that her exposure had to be public. Her lies had destroyed not only our relationship, but also my image of her as a person. And I wanted everyone who thought Kate was a wonderful wife and mother-to-be to see her true face. After I gathered all the possible evidence of her infidelity, I had no more doubts. Emails, phone calls, surveillance videos. Everything pointed to the fact that Kate and Mark had been plotting behind my back for a long time. Now I had to decide how I wanted to strike to destroy her illusion and show the truth to everyone who believed in her image of the perfect woman. I decided that a simple expose would be too weak. I wanted this exposure to be public and so humiliating that she would not be able to restore her reputation. The best way would be to organize another meeting with our friends and family. Kate has always loved being the center of attention, so I decided to use her own desire for fame against her. My lawyer had already prepared all the legal documents. I filed for divorce first. He also advised me to file an application for property division and custody of our unborn child. Citing her infidelity, we were sure that with such evidence, she would not be able to sue for anything. For the next week, I acted as if nothing had happened. Kate had no idea that I already knew everything. She continued to play her part, smiling, pretending to be excited about the pregnancy, and even discussing plans for the nursery with me. Mark also kept coming to our house, not even hiding his presence. He acted like it was his home, and that only made me more determined. I knew that they were both confident in their victory, but their overconfidence became their biggest weakness. The day of the final exposure came. I invited all our friends and family to dinner. Officially, it was another family gathering to celebrate our unborn child. Kate was happy to accept the idea. She has always loved having all the attention on her. This will be a great opportunity for us to show everyone how happy we are, she said with a smile. Well, she was right. This meeting would indeed be unforgettable. The guests began to gather in the late afternoon. Everyone was in a great mood, discussing the unborn child, joking and enjoying drinks and snacks. Kate walked around the house, accepting compliments and playing the role of the perfect wife. Mark was there, too. He kept hanging around Kate, and they exchanged brief glances and smiles from time to time. It was disgusting to watch, but I knew my patience would soon pay off. When everyone was gathered in the living room, I stood up and got everyone's attention. Thank you for coming today. I would like to share a very special moment with you. It's about our future and how we got to this day. Kate was happy to sit down next to Mark, sure that I was going to make some sentimental speech about our love. But it was quite different. I went to the TV and turned on the projector. The first video from the surveillance cameras appeared on the screen. Everyone saw Kate and Mark sitting on our couch, hugging and kissing. Then I ran screenshots of her messages, where she wrote about her plans for divorce, alimony, and property division. The room fell silent. Kate turned pale. She tried to say something, but couldn't find the words. Mark lowered his head, trying to avoid stares. "This is what the truth looks like," I said. "This is your imaginary happiness. I'm not going to play these games anymore." Her mother burst into tears, and her friend left the room without saying a word. Everyone else stood there stunned, not knowing how to react. Kate tried to justify herself. "Oliver, it's not what you think. I want to tell you, you've already said it, and we all saw it. It's over." After the room was filled with oppressive silence, I saw a completely different person in front of me. It was no longer the Kate I had known for 7 years. She was a broken, confused woman who had just realized that she had lost her own game. She was sitting on the floor, staring blankly in front of her, unable to even respond. Mark had run away. Her friends and family were in shock, and she was left all alone. I felt not satisfaction, but emptiness. She had used me. She had lied. She had planned her perfect escape after the birth, where I was supposed to be the fool who would just keep working for her. And now this perfect plan was falling apart right before her eyes. She looked up at me with a look of fear and despair. "Oliver, please." Her voice was different than usual. For the first time, it lacked the confidence, the cold logic with which she manipulated everyone around her. I stood before her, but now I felt nothing for this woman. "What, Kate? Are you saying that all this was a mistake? That you really loved me? That you were just confused?" I... She trailed off, tears streaming down her cheeks. I couldn't even imagine that someday I would be completely indifferent to her crying. "If you really loved me, why did you write to Mark that you wanted to leave me? Why did you discuss in such detail how you would leave me with the child and take half of everything from me?" "I don't know." Her voice broke into a whisper. I leaned over and whispered to her, "That's the only thing you said that was true. You never knew what you were doing." She sobbed and covered her face with her hands. I turned to the guests, who were still standing in complete silence. No one knew how to react. Kate's parents looked disappointed and angry. Her friends couldn't even look her in the eye. I think this is the end of the party, I said calmly. Kate's mom came up to me and put her hand on my shoulder. I'm so sorry, Oliver. I don't know how she could do this to you. It's not for you to apologize. She should do it. I looked at Kate, but she didn't say a word. She knew that any excuse she could make now would be meaningless. One by one, people began to leave. No one said a word in her defense. I took the divorce papers and put them in front of her. I have already prepared everything. Sign them and get out of my life. She looked at the papers, her hands shaking. You can't do that. I laughed again. I've already done it. You thought you were in control, but I was one step ahead. Her breathing became ragged. Oliver, please. I didn't want to listen to her anymore. I just pointed to the door. Get out. She remained sitting there, unmoving. But when I took a step toward her, she jumped to her feet and quickly left the house without another word. I closed the door behind her. After all this, I felt neither triumph nor joy, only devastation. I had won the war, but the price was too high. When Kate left the house, I closed the door and listened to the silence. She did not knock again, did not return, did not try to speak again. For the first time in months, there were no more lies in this house. I sat down on the couch and stared at the wall. I had won. I had destroyed her plans, deprived her of everything she had tried to take from me. But at the same time, I felt a strange emptiness. I was not the naive man who believed in our happy family. She had disappeared from my life, but it wasn't over yet. The next morning I received a call from my lawyer. He told me that Kate had already tried to contact another lawyer to challenge the documents I had prepared, but it was all in vain. I had too much evidence of her infidelity and her intentions to take the money from me after the birth. The judicial system was on my side. I got full custody of my unborn child before he was born. Kate didn't get a cent. I kicked her out of the house, and now all she had was her own mistakes. She lost her friends because no one could forgive her for what she had done. Her parents turned their backs on her after I personally handed them copies of her correspondence. They were shocked that their daughter was capable of such meanness. And the worst thing for her is that Mark also dumped her. I heard from mutual friends that after that night, he just disappeared. He didn't answer her calls, didn't open the door when she came to see him. He, like everyone else, realized that Kate was now a broken person with no support, no plan, and no future. The next week, I received a message from her. Please talk to me. I've made a terrible mistake. I didn't reply. A day later, another one. I know what I did was terrible, but we can fix it. I won't be like that anymore. Let's just talk. I didn't answer again. A few days later, she was standing outside my house. Oliver, I know I lost you, but don't take away my chance to be a mother. I looked at her. This was not the Kate I had once loved. This was a woman who had realized that she was no longer in control. You gave that up when you started writing to Mark, saying that I would only pay you alimony. But I was stupid. I didn't realize what I was doing. You knew exactly what you were doing, and now you're paying the consequences. She started to cry. Do you have any regrets? I looked into her eyes. No. For the first time in months, I was telling her the truth. I no longer felt anything for her, neither hate nor love. She was just someone I had once known. I turned around and closed the door. I never saw her again. My child was born healthy. I am raising her alone, and I will never tell her that her mother was a wonderful woman, because it would be a lie. I won. She lost. And I have no regrets.